I was sitting in a bathroom stall at Allina Health 40 minutes before my doctor was even supposed to tell me anything, trying to cry as quietly as I possibly could. 40 minutes. That's how much time there was between me finding out and someone qualified actually being in the room to explain what it meant. I want to tell you about those 40 minutes today and about why, after years of being someone who always looked, I finally stopped. I'm Gwen Kelly, and this is Combating Cancer, a show for anyone whose life has been touched by this disease. Whether you're in treatment right now, in remission, caregiving for someone, grieving someone, or just trying to understand what all of this actually does to a person. If you're new here, quick background. I was diagnosed with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer at 19. This podcast is what I built out of that. Today, I want to talk about something that comes up in almost every scan cycle I've had since, and honestly, I think it applies to way more people than just cancer patients. It's about the patient portal, that little notification that tells you your results are in before anyone has actually explained them to you. And why I learned the hard way that, for me, opening at first was doing far more harm than good. So let me back up and tell you about the morning at Allina. I'd had an MRI at 6:30, the kind of early that only exists in hospital and airports. After the scan, you go up to the 3rd floor and you wait for your doctor to come share the results in person. That's the process. That's how it's supposed to work. But about 40 minutes before my appointment, I got an email and then a text right behind it. Your reports are ready. And like I'd done plenty of times before, I opened it. I scrolled all the way down to the bottom to the section they call impressions, which is really just doctor speak for how did the scan go. It said the patient would need to come in for a follow-up MRI quickly, that serious action would be needed, and that there was a lesion present. I stopped reading right there. My heart just sunk. And my dad was sitting maybe 3 feet away from me, close enough that if I reached my arm out, I could have touched him. And I remember consciously trying to keep my face from doing anything. I closed my phone and I said, "Okay, Dad, I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'll be right back." And I went in and I cried as hard as I could while trying to hold myself together because I didn't want him to know yet. Here's why that moment leveled me the way it did. I was 23. I had about a year of clear scans since transitioning to Allina. No evidence of disease, over and over. And I've said before on this show that there's nothing worse than finding out you have cancer for the first time. Sitting on that bathroom floor, I genuinely felt like this was just as comparable. A clean streak doesn't make you immune to the next hit. Sometimes it just means you let your guard down enough that the next hit lands exactly as hard as the first one did. And to really understand why, I have to take you all the way back to the actual day I found out. The first time. When I was 19 years old and heard the words brain cancer applied to me for the very first time in my life. That's where this whole habit started. That morning, before we had even left for my hair topper appointment, my results had already come through the portal. I opened them and couldn't make sense of any of it. I hadn't heard from my surgeon in New York yet. No call, no explanation, just a report sitting there full of language I didn't know how to read. My brother, who was in med school at the time, said he'd send it off to a family friend who was a doctor just so someone could actually tell us what it meant. And once that was in motion, it left my mind completely. I had a hair topper to get fitted for, something to help me feel like myself again after everything they'd shaven off for surgery. And that's what I let myself focus on instead. My mom and I went out to lunch afterward to celebrate getting that piece of the day done, and we were sitting there celebrating a small win when her phone buzzed. It was that family friend texting her back, telling her I had brain cancer. I was walking back to the table with my food when I saw her face, that hurt, wrenching look. And the second I saw it, it all came rushing back to me, and I knew. I told her those were my results and that I deserved to know, and eventually she told me. I remember being stunned because cancer wasn't even on my mind in that moment. I'd been so focused on covering up my hair that suddenly, in that 1 second, hair was no longer going to be the saddest thing about this entire journey. I told her I wasn't hungry anymore. We got our food to go because grief doesn't really pair well with the table for two. We drove home in complete silence, and then I went down to my basement and I cried and I cried. That's the wound this whole habit comes from. That day, the information didn't even come from me looking. It came from it moving through other people first. My brother, my mom, other doctors, a family friend, before it ever reached me the right way. And I think some part of me decided after that, if it's going to reach me either way, I'd rather be the one who sees it first. After that, there was chemo, radiation, having my eggs preserved, and then a new rhythm, scans every 90 days. I've said before that scan days are some of the worst days there are because they're soaked in uncertainty. You're either about to hear no evidence of disease or you're not. And every single time, the portal alert comes in before your doctor ever does. From the time I was 19 until I was 22, about 3 years I was being treated at Minnesota Children's Hospital, and their team knew exactly how tempted I was. They'd send me results the second they had them, sometimes as late as 11 at night, specifically trying to beat me to the portal because they knew how high my anxiety ran. They were doing everything they could do to protect me from myself. And even with all of that, sometimes I still went and I looked anyway, and I was just lucky. Nothing bad ever came back. At 22, I transitioned to the adult unit at Allina Health, and that kind of built-in protection doesn't automatically transfer with you. Nobody was there staying up late trying to beat me to my own results because I only had to wait an hour to find out my results. So I kept doing what I'd always done, checking the portal in the morning right after my scans, seeing clear results, and moving on with my day instead of sitting there for an hour wondering, and it worked until one day it didn't. So we're back in the bathroom. I came back out and I tried to put on a brave face, act like nothing had changed. My dad told me later on that he already knew, just from my body language, and that he spent those 40 minutes bracing himself for whatever he was about to hear when he walked through those doors. When we finally got called in, my doctor had brought a colleague with her. They sat down to tell me the news, and I said, yeah, I know. I already saw the results, and she was stunned. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you saw the results. I didn't even have time to explain it to you. She just was apologizing, and I was uncontrollably sobbing. The kind of crying where you can't actually hear what's being said anymore. And that's exactly where a caregiver has to step in. My dad sat there and he absorbed every bit of it, what the next steps were, why this could have happened, what the plan was going to be, because I physically could not take in one more word. He carried the information for both of us in that moment, the same way I tried badly to carry it alone for 40 minutes earlier. The plan they landed on was to bring me back in once a month to monitor it. My doctor framed it as better safe than sorry. She was honest that she didn't fully know what it was yet. It could shrink, it might not. And to flash forward about a year from 23 to right now at 24, that lesion shrank, it kept shrinking, and eventually it disappeared completely. It doesn't even show up on my scans anymore by the grace of God. Which means I spent an entire bathroom's worth of grief on information that wasn't even the full picture yet. I didn't know a lesion could show up and then shrink away. I didn't know serious action language doesn't automatically mean the worst outcome. I'm not a doctor. Reading a radiology report isn't my field, and I had no business trying to interpret one alone, with no context, 40 minutes before someone qualified could actually explain it to me. And since that day, my dad has made it a rule between us and my doctors that I'm not allowed to look at the patient portal anymore. I'm 24 years old, and I have been banned at looking at patient portals. There's a reason we wait for the doctor to share the results in the room. And here's the frustrating part. There's nothing in the system that can actually block me from receiving that notification. It's built into how the portal works. The doctors don't like it. They can't stop it. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to me against myself. Every time we're sitting in the waiting room now, my dad turns to me and says, hey, we're not looking at the results, right? At first, I'll be honest, I push back on it. Now I just say, yep, I know, we're not looking at it, because I don't know how to interpret this. Google is not going to be my frontier, not after everything it already put me through the first time. I can't be the one responsible for interpreting my own results because that's not fair to myself. I'm really just doing myself an injustice. And I want to be really clear that I don't think this is just a cancer thing. This applies to anyone getting any kind of medical test results. Whether you're going in for a heart workup, checking your blood pressure, getting screened for diabetes, anything. The second you type a symptom or a result into Google, it tends to ignite fear more than it offers clarity. Here's the way I've come to think about it. Google can give you information. It cannot give you your information. It doesn't know your history, your scans, your treatment, what your doctors are actually watching for, or why one specific phrase shows up in your report instead of another. It has no way of holding any of that. It doesn't know the grade of what you're dealing with. It doesn't know everything you've already survived, or that you might be the outlier the statistic never accounted for. And I don't think this is only a rule I've made for myself. My care team at Minnesota Children's stayed up until 11 at night trying to get ahead of my own portal alerts. That's not nothing. The people who actually understand your case want you to wait for them too, because they know what it costs you not to. I keep thinking about that bathroom stall, sitting there trying to cry quietly enough that my dad wouldn't hear through the door. I think for a long time, I confused knowing sooner with having more control. If I could see the results first, maybe I could prepare myself. Maybe nobody could catch me off guard. Maybe I could have a few minutes to figure out how I was going to react before somebody else watched me react. But cancer has taught me over and over again that information and control are not the same thing. Reading the results 40 minutes earlier didn't change what was happening inside my brain. It didn't change what the doctor was going to say. It just gave me 40 extra minutes to be terrified by myself. And I think about that version of me at Cafe Zupa's, watching my mom's face change before I'd even set down my food. 2 different days, years apart, but the same lesson underneath both of them. I thought I was protecting my dad by carrying those 40 minutes alone. Looking back, neither of us was protected. We were just scared separately in the same room instead of scared together. I do not have to be the one who finds out first. Finding out first has never actually protected me from anything. It only ever cost me time I could have spent letting someone else carry it with me instead. You don't always have to know first to be prepared. Sometimes being prepared means letting someone be beside you when you find out. So that is all I have for you guys today. If this episode hits close to home, or you got someone in your life who checks their portal the second that notification comes through, send them this one. As always, my door is always open if you or someone you know want to come on and share your story, or if you have a business inquiry that aligns with this mission. But yeah, that's all I got, and I will chat with y'all next Wednesday.